East West Manufacturing, based here in Atlanta. East West Manufacturing has been very impressive in terms of its success, and it's a true global company that we're very proud of that grew here in Atlanta. And Scott has been a big supporter of education activities in Atlanta and is a sponsor of the China Research Center, which I'm always grateful and always would like to point out. In the early days, Scott would come to our programs to learn about China and Asia. And today, we go to Scott's programs to learn about China and Asia. So with that, I will turn it over to Scott, but just a small caveat that he is speaking not on India per se, that title is slightly wrong in your program, but he can speak on India if you have questions related to that. So Scott, please.
Hello everybody. What I thought I'd do, I'll talk a bit about East-West, and then I'll talk about some of the challenges that I've experienced over the last 20 years. My first trip to China was in 1993. I was a global strategy consultant for PricewaterhouseCoopers. Decided to start my first company in Hong Kong in '96, and our mission was to make electronic assemblies for U.S. automotive companies. I sold that business in '98, and then I went to run an offshore division for an air conditioning company here in Atlanta called Diversitech. In 2001, I decided to create a joint venture with Diversitech, which has become East-West. So here we are 12 years later. I think my 100th trip to China was sometime in 2010. We started operations in Vietnam sometime in 2004, and we just opened up our office operations in India last year. So quickly on East-West, we're a global contract manufacturing company. We make products in those regions of the world where we think it's best suited for our customer. You hear about onshoring and offshoring. We believe in right-shoring. We have products made here in the U.S. We have products made in Vietnam, depending on what the supply chain advantages are for those products, and I'll talk more about that. So our job is to make our customers competitive, and that's what we do. And we believe that by making them competitive, they'll become stronger, and most of our customers that we deal with are global companies. We make products that are in China that are shipped down to India for sale, and Vietnamese products that are shipped into China, and so on. We move things all over the world. Example, this was Neiman Marcus's beauty product of the year this year. It's a microdermabrasion appliance. You might have seen it on QVC. We sold 30,000 of these on Sunday on QVC. It makes your skin look beautiful.
All right.
Yeah, did you bring
Yes.
You might have spent on Good Morning America and the Today Show. We do not market or sell any of our products. We let our customers do them. We are just the manufacturer of these products. You all know Amazon. Amazon bought a robotics company. It's very cool stuff. We're automating their warehouses. It's very much like ATM machines for banks and for what automated check-in kiosks are for the airline industry. These robots automate warehouses. Last year, Amazon spent $1 billion on picking orders in their warehouses. They're trying to strive for same-day delivery in most major cities, and so they are creating robots that are run around the warehouse and retrieve product and deliver it. So if you've used Amazon Prime lately, which is a really neat service, you'll get your product within 24, 48 hours. The robots that move those products, East-West manufactures a good bit of the components that go inside of them. So we have 3 divisions. We have an engineered products group where we focus on robotics. We just got approvals to make medical instruments in our Vietnamese facilities. We do a lot of industrial HVAC. We own a factory in China that makes motors. If you order an Amstel beer in Europe, the delivery system was probably made by us. If you've been in the Bellagio Hotel, the room that you stayed in, the air that was blowing in your room was created by a motor made from East-West. Ice makers, any hotel ice maker by Manitowoc, East-West makes many of the components and motors that go into those systems. If you've had your air conditioner broken and serviced by any of these companies, Carrier, Lennox, York, or Nordyne, chances are the parts that they brought with them in their van were made by East-West. So quickly, Key facts about us: last year we were the 14th fastest growing company in the state, according to Georgia Fast 40. We have 500 employees globally, 50 engineers on staff, 2,000 containers we imported last year, and we do make products here now in the U.S. 5,000 unique products, and it's very broad. We're trying to focus that more onto high-tech products. We do a lot of things like surge protectors. We like smart motors. We like robotics, and now we're getting into medical. Our infrastructure: we have 3 distribution facilities, 2 in the U.S., 1 in Europe, 4 fully owned factories, 7 business units, and 150 Asian suppliers. So that's East West. And again, I started this in 2001, and it's been a fun ride. So what I thought I would do is, in 20 years that I've been doing this, you know, I've always thought of doing business. I heard this great analogy of doing business in Asia relative to the U.S., where if it was like playing business in the U.S. was playing chess, business in Asia was like playing 3-dimensional chess, only the pieces move by themselves at night. And so I thought, using that framework, you know, we could break up some of the things that I deal with on a daily basis in terms of international trade and manufacturing and global factories and so on, into the easy puzzle pieces, the more medium puzzle pieces, and then the 3-dimensional ones there on the end. So I have my list. Under easy, we'll start there. Avoiding corruption. You know, I get asked this a lot about dealing with corruption in Asia, and frankly, I just don't see it. I haven't seen it in 20 years, and I think that's partly the way we operate. We do not deal with state-owned enterprises. We do not deal with the government. We're under the radar, so to speak, in that realm. And when we invested in the facilities in Asia, we were inside of office parks that had multinational representation, and that insulated us from a lot of these problems. So, like 20 years, and I've not seen much in the way of corruption. Language. Language has been relatively easy. We use English across all of our documentation, control docs. We're an engineering company. It's all in English. All the conversations, back and forth, procedures, everything is English, and that tends to be relatively easy for us. And everybody on our team in Asia, all the professional staff, speaks English generally as a second language. Managing logistics. We move a lot around Asia. We move a lot from Asia to the U.S. and also to Europe. Overall, it's been a relatively easy thing for us to manage. Complying with customs, domestic and foreign. Overall, that hasn't been very difficult. It's a simple process once you get the hang of it. Managing currency risk. We have 5 currencies that we work with. I would say 80% of what we deal with today is in U.S. dollars, but we deal with a lot of R&D internally. We're accelerating that. We have BND, we have Hong Kong dollars. A lot of stability in those currencies, and it's predictable. So it hasn't been too much of a challenge for us. Abiding cultural norms. You hear about, in order to work in China, you need to understand how things are done in China, and you know, you have to respect any culture you work in, and you have to learn how things are done. But you know, I think we're doing well there, and I haven't, as far as I know, I haven't had guys running out the door because I offended them somehow, because I wouldn't, you know, drink a beer with them or have a cup of tea. Buildings. We have 4 buildings that we built. Buying equipment and owning assets in Asia. Overall, I put that in the easy bucket. Repatriating money, I get asked that a lot. How do you get your profits back? We can do it. It hasn't been that much. There's a process for going through it, but we've been able to do it. Finding professional services, banking, legal, accounting. We use Pricewaterhouse down in Vietnam. We have our firms in Hong Kong. We have professional staffing firms that we use. Overall, I've been quite satisfied with the professional services that we've used. And then recruiting loyal, hardworking staff. I'm not including managers or engineers in that bucket. But as far as recruiting professional staff, we've built an incredibly strong team, very loyal, hardworking, and I've got folks now in Asia that we've had on our payroll since the very beginning that do a great job for us. So all those I would characterize in the easy bucket here on the first one. Now moving into the more challenging bucket under moderate. Communication. And I think most companies struggle with this. I'm putting communication in there, not just language, but the fact that so much of our correspondence has to go through email. And email is just a tough thing to communicate, so we have a lot of routine weekly meetings on Skype and a lot of phone calls to try and make things sure they're cleared up. Finding qualified partners that you can trust. That's tough. You can find them. We've got 150 of them, but there's shenanigans that you have to, and games that get played, and so finding guys that can work, teams that can work with you consistently can be a bit of a challenge. Labor shortages, particularly after Chinese New Year. In our motor factory, we lost 20% of our labor force. It's the highest number we've ever experienced. That puts a big blow on you when you're coming back, and all of a sudden in our industry, motors production skyrockets right this time of year. It's a seasonal product, and so to lose 20% of your workforce right when you come back from Chinese New Year is really hard to recover from it. This year, I think more than I've ever heard, labor shortages has been a problem throughout our supply chain. Controlling quality, that's always a major issue. We've learned how to manage this, but what we've learned over the years is you can't trust the materials certifications, you can't trust a lot of your suppliers, component suppliers, you really have to be thorough. And so we've got a lot of resources that are focused on that. Observing local government regulations and accounting standards. We set up a WUFI recently in China, and I could not believe the amount of paperwork that was involved in setting that up. We applied in India, we applied for our business registration in November 2011. We still do not have our official business registration. We're operating in India, we have employees in India, but we still do not have an official business registration such that we can have our own office. So we're having to use third parties to manage all this. The fact that it's taking almost, 2 years to get a business license in India is mind-boggling to me. And mind you, I've met with all the consulates, I've met with in Hong Kong, Atlanta, and I'm still not getting through. So if any of you know anybody. Managing new projects and lead times, that's a challenge no matter where you are, and that's something that we've put a lot of emphasis into lean management to support that, a lot of processes and so on. Moving into the difficult bucket, number one, I would say terminating employees in Asia. That is very difficult. I have a lot of stories I can tell you. Chances are, if you terminate somebody for bad performance, better than a 50% chance you will get sued, in my experience, and then the lawsuits can go on for years. And while in every case we've won, it has been incredibly distracting. In Vietnam, we had a lot of terminations originally because we hired local managers that just weren't performing. Now we have an entire expat. I think I had the United Nations working for us in Vietnam. We have American, French, Dutch, Malaysian, all in our management team there, just because we couldn't find the management that we needed for Vietnam. But when you have a manager that's not performing, pushing them out of the organization is extremely difficult. Second, paying U.S. tax on global income. That's pretty painful. I have a 46% effective tax rate on money. If I make it in India, China, or anywhere else in the world, if I sell something I made in China to India, we have to pay tax on it. So we're looking at restructuring our entire organization to deal with that. But growing a manufacturing business and trying to invest in assets with that kind of burden is really difficult. Managing research and development, we tried that. We hired R&D folks in Asia, and it took too long, and it was too difficult to communicate new concepts and ideas, so we brought all that back here, and it's even at a higher price, it's well worth it. Implementing new technologies has been difficult. Finding talented and local managers has probably been my #1 challenge in Asia. Most of the managers that we have in Asia, we developed. We started them when we thought that we found folks that had the talent and the desire to succeed, and so we put them through the schools, and we had very defined programs and what would allow them to get to a management level in our organization. So we're always trying to localize positions. Managing a joint venture. That one's been, we started our joint venture in 2003, and it's like a marriage. I feel like I'm always in counseling. It's been a tough, it's probably been our best investment ever. Certainly, it's been one of the wisest things we've done, but I tell you, it's tough. And even if we had control of it, it still would not be any better. It's been tough for us. And then finally, I would say working with state-owned enterprises, I think I'm 0 for 10. I've tried to do business arrangements with state-owned enterprises numerous times, and it just culturally and from the way we operate, we could never come to proper terms. And so that's my last one. That's all I got. Thank you.
Great list. We'll come back to that.
All right.
Sure.